However, the two issues, despite being different, have some commonalities. So I shall tell my story, and then I will tell my Nigerian story afterwards. But this story, before I begin, in Kenya we say hadithi, hadithi, which means story, story. And there are Kenyans in here. You respond? Hadithi njo. So hadithi, hadithi? Hadithi, hadithi. And her name was Washu. What was her name? Washu. Sorry, what was that? Washu. And Washu was loved by everybody in her community. She was very hardworking. Whenever anybody needed any help, Washu was the first person to offer her assistance. And also, Washu was kind. She had a generous nature. If she ever saw somebody who was maybe feeling not very well or perhaps upset, she would race over to them and she would not leave them alone until she was satisfied that they were just fine. And so everybody loved Washu. And Washu was married to a man, and his name was Kamau. What was his name? Kamau. And Kamau was many years older than Washu. He was one of the elders in the community. And because of his position, he had acquired herds of cattle that stretched out to the horizon. He was a very wealthy man, and his status and his age and his position meant that he had several wives and plenty of children. But he was a good man, and he was a fair man, and he made sure that his entire family were very well taken care of. And it's a story from the Gikuyu people of Kenya, who are our largest ethnic group. And this story, it's about a tradition. There was something in this community, something that the women were not allowed to do. And if the woman was caught doing this one thing, she would be punished and her husband would be punished too. And what was this thing? The woman was allowed to eat meat. Imagine. I saw many of us upstairs eating that chicken, that lovely beef stew. And imagine you're a woman and you're not allowed to eat it. But the women, they had many jobs. They had to cook, they had to clean, they had to harvest, they had to all of these things, look after the children, wash the clothes, go out in the farms, all of these things and more. And whenever there was a celebration, where there was a feast, when a new child entered the world, or wherein life departed, when two lives were united, when the rains fell, when the harvest grew, whenever there was a reason to celebrate, the chickens, the goats, the sheep, the cows were slaughtered, and a feast was prepared by the women. And they would roast, they would boil, they would fry, they would stew, and then they would begin to serve their fathers, their uncles, their no, you can't have any, their grandfathers, their nephews, no, you cannot have, and so on. But not one morsel would ever pass their lips. And this tradition had existed for such a long time that nobody thought about it. Nobody questioned it. It was simply something that the women did not do. But one day, a new child had been born, and a feast was prepared to welcome this beautiful new life. And all the women were gathered together in the cooking area. And you know how women are when they're all together? They were laughing. Can I hear some laughter? Somebody said something shocking and they went. Somebody said something so disgusting and they said, yeah. But for some reason, all the women had something else to do. And Washu, she found herself alone. And you know, when you're on your own, your mind begins to wander. You begin to think of things that perhaps you shouldn't really be thinking of. And Washu, she began to wonder what that delicious aroma, what that meat tasted like. And at first, she tried to push the idea out of her head. But the seed had been sown and it started to grow, and Washu could not contain her curiosity. She picked up a knife. She looked around, but nobody was watching. It was sweet, it was juicy, it was tender, and she thought, why? Why are the women not allowed to eat the meat? But Washu was not stupid. She knew the tradition. She knew what would happen if she was caught, and she did not want any trouble. So she decided to keep it her own little secret. And the weeks went by, the months went by. She would always find a little occasion to enjoy herself. And the people began to notice, she was enjoying all this naughtiness, maybe a bit too much. But one day, there was another celebration. Somebody in the village had passed on, and a feast was prepared to celebrate that life. And so Washu, there of meat, her knife, and she cut a big, fatty, juicy piece of meat. Oh, she was enjoying herself. When suddenly, she heard footsteps approaching. When suddenly, there was Kamau. Habari ya leo Washu. Eh? Are you not speaking to me today, Washu? But Kamau soon realized that his wife was eating meat. Washu, how can you do this to me? Don't you respect our laws? Don't you respect me, your husband? Don't you care about this community? You know that this is wrong. Washu, this has got to stop. But Washu tried to ask her husband, but please tell me, why, troublemaker? I don't want to bring shame on my family. Even thinking about it, she took her knife, she cut off a piece and she had been seen. Somebody had seen Washu, and Washu was dragged before the elders. I need you to come up here. Come, Washu. Yes. There's steps if you need. Now tell me, Washu, you're here in front of all the elders. Why are you eating meat?
It tastes good.
You are willing to forsake hundreds of years of tradition because it tastes good. Hey, where is that husband of yours, huh? There he is. Husband, come here. Come. Yes. Come. Kamau, tell me, did you know that your wife was eating meat? So this woman, not only is she breaking our traditions, she is also a liar, and she deceives her husband. Is that right? This kind of woman is trouble. Kamau, this woman, if the women find out what she's doing, they'll all want to eat meat. Is this what you want? No, of course not. That meat is for us, the men. Washu, you are to stop. There was trouble that night. Kamau, he had been humiliated in front of his peers. And Washu, again she tried to ask, but please, husband, tell me why we cannot eat the meat. But Kamau, he didn't want to speak to his wife. He didn't even want to look at her. And so Washu thought, out with the children or in the farm or doing something else. And do you know, years went by when the chief announced that his beautiful daughter was going to marry the son of the chief from the next village. This was huge. The villagers would be stronger, more prosperous. He would bring peace to the area. And so the biggest feast that had ever been had was announced, and everybody's help was needed, including who? Washu. Oh no, please don't make me come and cook, please. But she was forced into the cooking area. And imagine, you must know nyama choma, huh? Yeah, that smell multiplied by 1,000,000, smoking barbecues, delicious meat being boiled and bubbled. Do you think she could resist? No! She looked at that meat and she thought, I want to eat it. So she took a piece of meat, the whole piece. She had been seen again, and once more, Washu was dragged before the elders. Washu, come here now. Yeah, look at you, huh? Why are you still eating meat?
It's very tasty.
It's very tasty. Look at, are you giggling? Huh? Oh my goodness, where is that husband of yours? Where's that husband? Yeah. Come, sir. Kamau. Let me see that thumb of yours. You see, it's pointing in the wrong direction. I told you to keep her under control. And you have let her escape, and now look at the situation we are in. Hey, Kamau, your wife is still eating meat. What's going on? Because it's delicious. It doesn't matter. What is, you see, I told you, Kamau, this woman will corrupt minds. Already she's corrupting yours. Hey, Washu, do you think you should be eating that meat?
I'm not so sure anymore. I will eat it.
You will eat that? Hey, that means you think our forefathers were wrong when they made that law. Let me tell you something. Those laws exist for a reason. Tell me, Kamau, meat is full of protein and energy.
And good looking. It makes you to be good looking.
It makes you good looking. Exactly. But the women, do the women need all those things? No. What do the women do all day? They clean, they cook. Huh? Does that require energy? No. But us men, you, no family, no friends, nobody. You're on your own. Do you understand? Ever go? Be gone. Hey, come out. Where do you think you are going? Huh? You think those laws apply only to the women? Our laws are clear. You must also be punished. You go into your field. You choose your juiciest, fattest, tastiest cow. You are going to take the knife and you are going to kill your cow yourself. Your wives will prepare a feast for the men. And we will enjoy your property, but you can watch and not join us. Do you understand? Go and get your cow. He went, he found that cow, he killed that cow with his own hands, and his wives started to prepare a feast for all of the men in the village. And they were busy cutting and roasting the meat, wrapping it in banana leaf to keep it cool and fresh, and then putting it to one side. They were roasting, wrapping, putting it to one side. And the men, they were so excited at this unexpected feast. Can I hear the sound of a hungry man laughing? They were so looking forward to this meat, when suddenly, out of nowhere, an eagle came flying from the skies. It swooped down. It took the biggest, tastiest piece of meat, and it flew away. And the men went, hey! What did the men say? Hey! Chase that eagle. Get that meat. Again? And they started to run. They ran and they ran, chasing after that eagle. Hey, that is our meat, they said to themselves. And the eagle was going faster, further, higher, when suddenly they saw the eagle drop the meat. that there's wild dogs, hyenas, vultures out there. And they said, no, we have to get to the meat first. They started to increase their speed when suddenly they stopped. They could not believe their eyes, because there in front of them was Washu. Washu, you can please be my Washu. Come be my Washu. Oh, Washu was devastated. She had been banished, separated from her whole community. She raised her hands to the sky and started to pray. Please help me. Please help me. I've been banished because of meat. And suddenly, out of nowhere, as if heavens were answering her prayers, female genital mutilation, which of power of making people think in slightly different ways. And when I was working in Kenya using this story, the issue of FGM was not even raised. It was only afterwards, when we started to talk about tradition, that it was the community themselves who started to bring up that discussion. And so the value of stories is beyond our imagination also. But I'm going to tell my next story, and this is a story that Lola saw in Edinburgh. And it is a story that I found in Cuba. I was at a storytelling festival in Cuba. And this story is a story that is rooted in Ifa mythology. And hundreds of years ago, this story carried across during the slave trade. And because the enslaved peoples were not allowed to practice their faith, they hid the Orishas behind the Catholic saints. And so the Virgin Mary became Yamaja, and so on and so forth. And so they were able to practice their faith, but it was always done in secret. And now you have the syncretic faiths of Santeria in Cuba, Candomblé in Brazil. If you want to find out more about that, Marta is here somewhere, I think. Yeah? So this is one of those stories. And stories have a way of adapting and evolving and gaining relevance depending on the requirements of the society at the time. And when I told this story in Edinburgh, there was quite a small venue, and it was performed in the round. And this is a shortened version of that. But there was one occasion when I had quite some important people came to see the show. And I was in the middle of this circle, and I saw David Gregg, who is the artistic director of one of our major theaters. I saw people from the British Council. I saw all these important people coming in, or people that I really wanted to make sure I put on a good show. And there was about 7 or 8 of them seated there in the audience. And then a Nigerian came in. And I thought, oh my goodness, then it's the pressure, huh? If this is a story and you're telling a story about Orisha, then it's a bit nerve-wracking. So I was also a bit nervous to come and tell the story here. But I'm going to tell the story. And I'm going to start it from a different place. I'm going to start it with a woman. And her name was Leiris. And Leiris made the same decision every day of her life. She chose to survive. And survival comes in many, many forms. She survived by doing exactly what she was told to do when she was told to do it. She survived by refusing to acknowledge that the black bodies hanging from the trees were human beings. She survived by remaining silent every time her master came and tore at her and then told her how special she was. And she survived by turning away when the cartloads of new workers arrived, because she knew that the pain in her eyes would affirm the fear in their hearts, and that would break her heart. And Leiris had learnt the art of survival from the very best, her mother and her mother's mother. But one day, Leiris was walking through the sugarcane fields, and she noticed that on the ground beside her, there was a millipede. Its long, fat, black body was being pushed along on waves of red legs. And she took a stick and she poked that millipede, and immediately the millipede coiled up. And in that moment, Laris began to think about that millipede. And then she thought about the hedgehog and how that curled up into a tight ball when it felt under threat. And she thought how the snail retreats into its shell to protect itself. And she thought, this is self-preservation. It means to hide away, lying in wait while we shrink and then die. And she thought, this is how I live. And I don't want to live like this. I want to run and feel the wind on my face. I want to smile without hiding it behind my hands. And she thought, I need to do something. She didn't know that the feeling she was feeling was looking for freedom, a longing for freedom. But she knew that what she felt was important. And so that night, Laris made a different decision. She waited and crept over the sleeping bodies towards the door. She let herself out and she crouched down low and she looked to make sure there was nobody there. And then she started to move, heading towards the long grass. And when she reached the long grass, she raised herself higher and she started to run towards the sugarcane fields. And when she reached the sugarcane fields, she let herself free and she started to tear through them. And she was running so fast, chasing that feeling inside that she did not feel her feet being cut, the sharp razor leaves of the sugarcane slicing into her skin. She ran and she ran until she had passed the field, up the mountains, down the other side, crossing the rivers, over more fields and meadows, further and further till she reached a forest, through the dark trees, ignoring the blinking eyes, until finally she reached the ocean and she could not run anymore. And then she fell to the sand and she rested. And doubt creep in. Laris, can you really survive out here on your own? Laris, are you really that brave? Are you really that strong? Was it really that bad? Have you made a mistake? And just then, she felt a hand on her shoulder, and she turned and saw herself looking into black eyes set inside a black face, white hair and white teeth framed by full, thick lips just like her own. The woman spoke and said, "How are you here?" Laris had no words to say, and so she started to weep. And the old woman held her until she had finished, and then Laris told her story. And the old woman listened. All must make choices. And some of those choices are easy, but some of those choices are very hard. And sometimes we don't know if the choices we are making are the right choice or the wrong choice. But no matter where we go with them, we must live with the consequences. But whenever you make a decision, you are not alone, because you have a home across the oceans, and you have a home among the stars. And all you have to do is to listen. 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 Listen, listen, listen. And the old woman told her this story. There was a man, and his name was Ochosi. What was his name? What was his name? And he was a hunter. Some say the finest the world has ever known. Whenever he released his arrow, he knew that it would hit the mark. When he went to the river and he cast his nets, he knew that he would reel in, he would pull in the fattest, most succulent fish. And he knew that wherever he laid his traps, he he would return to find his intended prey captured inside. And the trees would curve towards him because they understood him. And Ochosi was a man with a dream. The thing that he wanted more than anything else in the world was to become one of the Orishas. And every morning he would fall to the ground. Olodumare, Olofi, God of many names and one, please, let me join Elegba and Yemaja in your service. Send me a sign. But no sign ever came. And so Ochosi had to content himself doing the things that needed to be done. He would hunt, he would pray, and he would visit his mother who lived on the other side of the forest, his beloved mother. But one day, Ochosi was sitting in front of his house, and he was roasting some delicious game for his evening meal. And that delicious aroma pervaded the forest air, and it reached the nostrils of Elegba, he to whom all respect is due, master of destiny, bringer of chaos. And Elegba came and joined Ochosi. Please, please, my lord, you are welcome. Let me wash your hands. Let me wash your feet. Let me give you something to drink. Please, eat. Fulfill yourself. He was delighted that Elegba had joined him. And the two of them talked. And they shared stories. They laughed. They enjoyed themselves. And Elegba told Ochosi of a party that was taking place in Orun, the home of the gods, in 3 days' time. Oh, Ochosi listened. He could picture every tiny little detail. He could imagine every scene, but he knew that as a man, he could never go. And he contented himself in having heard the story. But just as Elegba was about to leave, he turned to Ochosi and said, I think that you might be who I'm looking for. I am looking for a gift to take the great Olodumare for this party. But I am out of ideas. I don't know what to take. Can you help? Yes, yes, yes. And he started to think of what he could take, what gift he could propose. And he remembered that when he was just a young child, he had seen the most beautiful, spectacular bird flying through the forest. And this bird had a voice sweeter than honey. And he knew that that would make the perfect gift for the great creator. And so he promised Elegba that he would find that bird. And Elegba was happy. He said, I will come in 3 days' time. That bird must be ready. And he left. Immediately, Ochosi gathered his traps together and he went out into the forest. He laid those traps down and he retreated to his house, to dream of the incoming glory. Woo! And when he went back the next morning, he went over to the traps. Huh? What is this? What is this? The traps were empty. There was nothing inside. And this had never, ever happened before. And he had a moment of panic for the first time in his life. He gathered the traps up and he went to a new part of the forest. And again, he laid the traps down and anxiously he retreated back to his house. But when he returned a few hours later, what is going on? What is this? The traps were still empty. And he began to fear, what if I don't find this bird? I will be a laughing stock. Who will respect me now? They will say, oh, there is Ochosi. Oh, the hunter. The one who could not hunt. He needed to find that bird. He gathered the traps up once more and went to a new part of the forest. He laid the traps down and he waited. Oh, please, please, I'm begging, I need some help, please. And when he returned a few hours later, there was nothing. It was empty. But then, in one of the traps was the bird. It shade of the rainbow. Pinks, blues, greens, yellows, golds. It was beautiful. And then it grain to feed the bird, but his house was empty. And so he left to make sure that bird was in perfect condition for the great Olodumare. But while he was gone, he had a visitor. Ojosi! Where is my boy? He's not here. Every time his mother comes to see him, he is never ever here. Are your children like this? No? It's only me. I am the unfortunate one. I am the one who has been cursed. Look at the state of this house. There's paper here, trousers here, things left around. He knows that his mother is coming to visit, and this is what he does for me. Hey, this boy, how can anybody have children like this, But you know, my boy is a good boy. Sometimes he is troublesome, but he brings me so much joy. Oh, does your child bring you joy? Yes. Oh, but pain too, But I want him to be happy. I'm not cleaning his house for him, but he's a hunter, so I want him to be strong. I'm going to make for him the most delicious meal. Maybe some fufu or some egusi, maybe some akara, moi moi, pepper soup, jollof rice, but none of that Ghanaian nonsense, No. We make it proper. We make it proper. Hey. Oh, my son, he will feast like a king. Oh, I'm going to find some but wait a minute. Look at this bird. Oh, it is so beautiful. Oh, the meat of this bird will be so tasty, so delicious. Yeah. She started to prepare some delicious food for her beautiful, wonderful son. And there she started to chop it into pieces. And as she started to place it into the pot, she looked around for some seasoning. Where is the seasoning in this place, There's no salt. There's no pepper. There's no herbs, no spices. How can anybody live in a house where there is no seasoning, Can you live in a house like this? No. Can you live in a house like this? No. How is my son going to keep a wife when he cannot even keep a pot of salt? And she left to go to her home to bring back the most beautiful seasoning to create this meal for her beloved son. But while she had gone, the cage was empty, the door was open. Somebody has stolen my bird. I need to find that bird. What can I do? He gathered his snares and he went back to the place where he had found the bird. He placed the traps down. He hid behind a tree. Please, this is the only thing I need. I will never ask for any aid, and prayed when suddenly the sound of wings crossed the skies, and he looked up to see the mate of the first bird high above the trees. He reached his hand out, and the bird accepted. He took that bird and he placed it in his bag, and very carefully he was thrilled. Wow! Look at this bird. It is perfect. But I am not going to take credit for this alone. Ochosi, you must come to Orun with me. Me? oiled his skin until he shone like the stars. He wore his finest robes. He combed out his hair. And when they were ready, they climbed that ladder of light that led to Orun. And when they arrived, it was more beautiful than he had imagined. The aroma of the food was overwhelming, so delicious. The music that was being played originated from instruments that he had never seen before. The orishas shimmered by in their gold and silver, red and green, yellow, sparkling robes. And then the giving of the gifts began, and each gift was received and appreciated. And when the bird was presented, Elegba stepped forward and he said, "This gift is from me, but it is this man Ochosi who helped me find it." And Ochosi was summoned before the Creator. He didn't know what to do. Should he stand strong and tall, or should he crawl on the ground? Should he have his hands in prayer or by his side? Should he look the Creator in the eye or lower his head? He was terrified. But he made his way forward. And as he stood there, Olodumare spoke. "Ochosi, I have seen you in your forest, and I know how much you love and respect it. And I am very pleased with this gift that you have found for me." He was so filled with joy. The tears were streaming down his face. He felt so light, so free. He leaped up, and Olodumare called again, "Ochosi, now that you are here with us, let me give you a gift. Anything your heart desires, I will give to you. But I don't want anything. This is the only thing that I have ever wanted. It's the only thing I've ever needed. It's the only thing that I have." And then he realized. He remembered how much he had wanted it, how much he had needed it. And he remembered how close he had come to having none of it at all. Somebody had stolen his bird. And if, by some miracle, the other one had not flown across the skies and landed in his hand, so he knew what he wanted. When I released this arrow, I wanted to pierce the heart of the person who stole my bird. But Olodumare knows everything. Please, I ask that you reconsider your request. But no, now he was fired up.